had a teacher whose name was Dr. Johansson. He used to teach my class civics. He was a special fella, not like the other teachers. In the school I attended, teachers were often not close to students in a social way. They were simply there to teach, and that only. Dr. Johansson liked to keep contact with students, and so he decided it would be a lot easier to do so if he had a Facebook account. He started adding people on Facebook from our school, and eventually started talking to them. He often posted weird stuff on his wall, and commented weird things. For example, one time he posted the song Straight Outta Compton by NWA and wrote, "All they say is nigger, nigger, nigger. I don't get it." Of course, some students commented and asked him why he had used the N-word so freely. He removed the post and apologized, and blamed it on being drunk. This was nothing. He started talking to students, mostly boys, and he managed to find some students' numbers and started sending them texts randomly. He would send stuff like, "Do you need help with your homework? You can come over to my place and I could help you out over a glass of wine." And this he would say to teens that were younger than 18 years. So according to the law here, they're not allowed to drink. And he pretty much offered alcohol to minors. Remember, he's a civics teacher. He should know this stuff by heart. It's also morals, for God's sake. Anyway, he never sent me a text, but he sent some weird texts to my friends. Later on, he decided to talk to me. This was a couple of weeks after he had started contacting students like this. He would speak to me on Facebook chat and ask me things like, "How do you get girls? Do you have a big dick? Do you often sleep with the girls after your shows?" Because I'm an artist. And I found these messages highly disturbing. They became worse. "You must be a stallion in bed. You're probably really good. And enter the rabbit hole with me. Come on. I'll take care of you." I had no clue what the fuck that meant. That was not everything. After a while, things started to get out of control. He started asking me to go out with him to the clubs, and I was not of age at this time. He said he could get me into the clubs with no ID, and all would be well. Of course, I said no. He then apparently got pissed at me and decided not to speak to me much after I had turned him down a few times. He started talking to one of my near friends instead. It ended with Dr. Johansson sending my friend a picture of his ass with the caption, "Please take me from behind and take me hard." Mind you, my friend was 17 at the time, while Dr. Johansson was in his mid-30s. That was taken to court, and Dr. Johansson got his little sentence. He was to do community service for a little while, and then he was to pay my friend some fine. That was it. Dr. Johansson still works at the school today, and is totally accepted. I find that very wrong, people. Very wrong. A man like that should not be able to get in that line of work again. Things could have gotten much worse than this. I'm not one to ever pass up an opportunity for a good deal on some high-grade cannabis. So when I received a text from a friend of mine telling me that he could sell me a quarter ounce of some good shit for $25, I jumped at the chance. He led me on all day, telling me he would be dropping it off in the evening. Evening came, and so did the text saying he'd drop by later that night. And finally, at 11:30 that night, I received a text that sent a ping of anxiety running through me. "Sup, man? I'm headed out of town for the night. Your sack is in the garage under the ladder." I knew exactly what this entailed. I was to walk the 5 blocks to his old residence, a mutual friend's house where he lived in a loft in the garage, slip in unnoticed by the neighbors, search until I found it, leave the money, and be on my merry way. Simple, right? Wrong. The walk started off sketchy enough with the lone streetlight on the block going out as I left, plunging me into this unnatural pseudo-darkness. I walked along in silence, the only sound coming from the highway some distance away. I'd walked this walk before, even at this hour, but I couldn't shake this anticipation in my gut. I reached the house, which I must say is absolutely terrifying at night. Something didn't seem right. My friend is very strict with his bedtimes. This meant that the house was dark at exactly 10 p.m. each night. Tonight, though, there was a glow coming from the first floor. This could have been a number of things. Maybe he had other friends over, brought a girl home, getting a late-night snack. I quickly reassured myself as I stepped through the door into the pitch-black garage. I closed the door behind me and got to searching. The garage is separated into an upstairs and downstairs to save space. Upstairs, there's a washer and dryer, while downstairs was box storage that led under the stairs, forming a cave-like lair. Not gonna lie, it felt like a robbery simulator, rummaging through my friend's garage unnoticed, looking for drugs. My heart began to race at the thought. It really started racing though, when I heard the heavy footfalls stomping their way toward the inside garage entrance. I'd kicked a paint can on accident, so they probably heard it. Now, my first instinct told me that I should make myself known. It was my friend's place after all. He probably even knew about the whole deal. We'd laugh, he'd point out where it was, and I'd be on my merry way. That's when I realized something. My friend does not own a single pair of boots. In a split instant, I had ducked down under the floorboards behind some boxes. The door outside was quite far away, the footsteps quickly approaching, so escape was not an option. I had to hide it out. I was so confused, I felt like I was in a slasher movie, hand over my mouth to keep from hyperventilating and everything. I listened as the door slammed open, the footsteps creaking slowly along the floorboards just inches to my right. They paced around the garage for what seemed like ages, grunting and taking heavy labored breaths. They stopped at the top of the stairs, never making their way down them. Soon enough, they made their way back into the house, slamming the door behind them. As soon as the door clicked, I bolted, and I didn't stop running until I was back home tucked away in bed. every single light in the house on for the rest of the night. I wasn't about to get the cops involved with the situation, lest they go searching and get my friend in trouble, so I simply sent him a text message and went to sleep. I awoke to 2 texts in the morning. The first was a message from my dealer friend asking me if I was alright. The second was a text from the friend who owned the house, telling me he got stuck at a friend's house overnight. I was so fucking confused. Later that day, the friend with the house sent me news links over Facebook with no caption. It was a news report about a burglary and murder that took place on my friend's street. 2 houses had already been confirmed as being broken into in the middle of the night. The first was the home of an injured veteran. He was found in the bedroom, 9mm slug lodged into his head, all the valuables in the house gone. The second house was my friend's. This happened about 15 years ago, when I was 12 and my younger brother was around 2. I was with my mom, my baby brother, my other brother who was about 10 at the time, and a friend one weekend at the mall. It might have been around Halloween, because I remember my baby brother was wearing some kind of cowboy thing with a hat. I should say that my brother was a really cute baby, so it wasn't unusual for random people to comment on it while we were out. We were in Burger King waiting in line, and this guy walks in behind us, and almost immediately starts going on about how cute my brother is. My mom looked, and she said she also saw a woman with a baby standing near him, so she just kind of figured this guy was a dad, and she didn't think it was unusual. We eat and forget about it, and go about shopping. We were in a CD store when we noticed the guy again, but this time he was with another man around the same age. They were both, it seemed, in their 40s or 50s. One was a little taller, but they were both chubby. The shorter guy wore glasses. There wasn't really anything distinct about them that would put them apart from anybody else, and I think that's the scariest part for me. They were talking to each other when they walked in behind us, and while we were shopping, one of them stayed at the front of the store, while the other one circled around us in the aisles toward the back. My mom says now this was when she started to realize something was up, but she didn't want to say anything because she didn't want us to freak out. So when we left the store, my mom took us towards the opposite end of the mall, keeping an eye out to see if the guys were still following us. And they were. We went into 2 or 3 more stores, and they were in each one. Not even shopping for anything, just looking at my brother like pedo sharks. At this point, my mom pulled me aside and told me what was going on. I had also noticed them, but I was 12 and I wasn't really thinking it was anything weird, until my mom confirmed that something really sketchy was happening. We decide we're going to leave since the parking lot was right outside and our car was close. And sure enough, the 2 guys start following us. My mom stopped, pretending to look in her purse for her keys, and they walked by us for a couple of minutes. Then one of them dropped something on the floor and stalled by pretending to look around for it. My mom looked at me and said, "Go find cops." This mall is in an urban area right outside of the Bronx, and it's fairly small, so it wasn't hard for me to find a couple of cops and tell them what was going on. I walked them back to where my family was, and I guess the two guys saw them because they'd jetted for the parking lot. The cops followed them, and my mom hauled ass back home. As far as I know, they got the plate number of the car the guys were in, and it turned out to be registered to some 90-year-old woman in Florida. That's all that really came of it, though. I don't know how scary this sounds to people who haven't experienced something like it. I know that it freaked me out enough that even a few years later I had nightmares about it, that the guys followed us home and murdered my family. My mama said that was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to her. I'm a member of the slam poetry scene. Basically, it's an excuse to get people to listen to performance poetry by adding a competitive element to things. After running through the small scene in my city and wanting to branch out and push my career further, I started visiting places within driving distance that I could spit. This led me to Charlotte, North Carolina. I started at their local team venue, where you compete to be a part of a squad that goes to a national competition every year. I was doing well and was accepted into the local crew pretty readily. This led to longer stays and features at some of the other venues in the city. I started going to one that was particularly popular and good for selling CDs. That's where I met him. He worked as a barback, occasionally got on stage and shared, frankly shitty, poems. He was the brother of the host and everyone knew and liked him. He slowly started flirting with me more and more, although in my loose days, searching for acceptance and love everywhere, something always kept me leery. I'd gladly accept the drinks he sent over, smoke his weed with the group in the stockroom between sets, and hang out at parties and events. I always had the tickle in my gut warning me not to get too close, but over a year or two, we continued to become friends. After a while, he started calling and texting me more often, poking me on Facebook daily, sending messages about wanting to be more than friends, that he wanted to find a snow bunny, yes, I'm white and he's black, and settle down. Again, I never entertained it. There was something gnawing at me, the crazy in his eyes too hard to miss. Eventually, I moved to Denver to take a position teaching poetry and work at my friend's law firm. The second Christmas I was there, I got the call. A friend from Charlotte relayed the following. He had found his white girl and gotten married. They seemed happy at first, but slowly began fighting more and more. It spilled over into the venue, and they had to be separated by friends from physically attacking one another in public. One friend, later thinking back, remembers the last time she saw them together, him pushing his wife, followed by her throwing a drink in his face and scratching his neck deep enough to draw blood. She said after the couple had been dragged away from each other, she sat with him and smoked a cigarette. She says she laughed and said, "You guys are gonna kill each other." Around Christmas last year, his wife just stopped coming to the bi-weekly events they both attended regularly. He explained it away that they were on a break. Time goes by. No one really questions that they hadn't seen or heard from her in a while, thinking she was breaking from the whole scene in order to put distance between herself and her husband. Her parents, however, hadn't heard from their daughter since the Thanksgiving dinner. They would call him, and he would say everything was fine and blow them off. This continues until a week after Christmas. Knowing their daughter would never miss a holiday without at least a call, they call the police and send them to the couple's home for a well body check. The cops arrive, knock on the door, and are let in. They ask him where she is. He replies she's in the bedroom. He shows them to the room, and there she lay, dead for weeks, rotting on their bed. Oh, and he killed her little dog too. During this time, he had been attending events hosting hip-hop nights, even publishing a blog on making marriage work on one of the local organization's sites. Never once letting on that every night he was going home and sleeping with his murdered wife. The sickest part of it all, he has a child from another relationship, a daughter whom he gets to celebrate every other holiday with. That Christmas, they opened gifts, had dinner, cuddled up on the couch and watched movies less than 100 feet from her decaying stepmother. I don't know what would have happened if I'd ever had taken him up on his offer to date. But I do know me and my gut are always going to stay on speaking terms, and I will always listen. There is a link to an article on this murder in the description below.